never smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some disease. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to run. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome everybody. Miss Liz in the house, and today I have an incredible guest in the house. I have Detective Heidi Chance, and she'll be talking about her book, A Chance for Awareness. Today's episode will be triggering, so I will mention that also in the disclaimer in a second. But if you guys haven't followed Miss Liz, go over to Miss Liz's Teatimes with an S on YouTube and give that a quick subscribe, because there is one tea time I guarantee that will save a life, make a difference, or encourage somebody to hold on another day. So let's get the disclaimer in. Let's get Heidi in here and let's just get right into it. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicated to sharing real life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. I'm Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own judgment when considering any action or decision that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me at my email, bookingmissliz@gmail.com, or check out my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. I, Miss Liz, welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect those wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Let me give you a little bit on my guest. Today on Tea Time with Miss Liz, I have an honor of welcoming a remarkable woman to the table, Detective Heidi Chance. For over 27 years, Heidi has stood on the front lines of law enforcement, dedicating her life to protecting the vulnerable and giving voice to those who have been silenced. Through her powerful initiative, A Chance for Awareness, Heidi shines a light on the hidden truths of human trafficking and online safety, educating communities and empowering families with knowledge and hope. She comes to us today not only as an expert, but as a compassionate advocate who believes that by working together, we can keep our children safe. So now with gratitude and open hearts, let me welcome her to the table, Detective Heidi Chance. Welcome, Detective Heidi.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
It is an honor to have you here. Well, Heidi, I'm going to take you down one rabbit hole, and then we're going to get right on to the topic of what we're here for today. So, Heidi, who were you as a little girl, and who are you now as a grown woman?
Well, as a little girl, I was aspiring to kind of follow into my father's footsteps. My dad was also a police officer, and I tell a story about how when I was learning how to drive, I've inherited his being in the right place at the right time. There were two instances when even just learning how to drive, I would be driving in the driver's seat and he would be with me, and we would observe crime happening right in front of us. One instance was an armed robbery of a shoe store. And then obviously in that I was witness to it, as well as at helping my dad try to follow these suspects to get a license plate description and put out information for law enforcement. And then the second time was he always taught me to look down alleys when you drive, you know? And so I was looking down the alley and he was also, and we actually saw two suspects jumping over the fence of our neighbor's house. And we ended up contacting those two individuals. So it's an honor to have his inherited his trait of being in the right place at the right time.
So police enforcement was in the family.
Yes.
So Heidi, what first inspired you to get into law enforcement and focus on sex trafficking cases?
Yeah, so obviously I knew in high school that I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps, and there was an opportunity in the police department that I ended up going with, which was Phoenix Police Department, where they opened up a new program that was called the Cadet Trainee Program. So at 18 years old, I applied for this program and got a position. And so I actually started my law enforcement career at 18, working in the police department as a civilian. And then I entered the police academy as a sworn officer at 20 and turned 21 3 weeks before I graduated the academy. But as far as the world of sex trafficking, that happened many years later, where I had decided to start a family after being in patrol for 3 or 4 years. And so I went to a position called school resource officer. And I blinked and 6 years went by. And I remember one day going to return the patrol car keys to the police station, because unfortunately we can't take the patrol car home. And I ended up passing an area of the precinct called the juvenile holding area. And this area was where we would keep juveniles away from adults. And there's a window in the door of this area. And I happened to see a girl sitting in the room, and I recognized her as a former student of mine when she was in 7th or 8th grade. And then on this day, she was still a juvenile, almost 17. And I, peeked my head in and I asked her, "Why are you in trouble?" And that's when she told me she was under arrest for prostitution. And this is many, many years ago when we were arresting juveniles for prostitution. And it was just a moment of just a mind-blowing realization that, obviously I've been a police officer for some time. I knew prostitution was a crime, but I didn't realize that children were involved in prostitution. And so that's what really sparked my interest in learning all I could about it, and then participating in whatever capacity I could to try and prevent kids from being involved in this.
How do you want to get into the difference between sex trafficking and human trafficking? And does human trafficking lead into sex trafficking all the time, or just sometimes?
So by definition, human trafficking actually covers two crimes. It covers forced sex, so sex trafficking, or forced labor, or labor trafficking. So those two crimes are under the umbrella name human trafficking. For forced sex or forced labor, both of those crimes, we have to prove elements of force, fraud, or coercion going on with the person that's being exploited. So as far as sex trafficking, that is what we try to accomplish when we're conducting an investigation.
And Heidi, you went undercover. How did that experience change your perspective on it?
Yeah, so when I first started going undercover after meeting that girl and having that aha moment, I was still in the school resource officer capacity, but I would do temporary assignments to the vice unit, is what it was called at the time. There were 3 squads back then, and their focus was on arresting prostitutes. And ironically, there were only 1 female position allowed for each squad because you needed male detectives to conduct prostitution arrests. And so I'm happy to say now, fast forward, several years, because I went there in 2008, we now have squads that are the female detectives outweighing the males. But my first experience with working undercover was pretty interesting, because it was a night that we were posing as prostitutes ourselves out on the street. And within 45 seconds, I had a buyer pull up on me without any effort at all and had an arrest. And in standing out there, I started to notice that if I had not engaged with this buyer and it didn't appear that I was going to be, engaging with them, there was 2 or 3 more waiting, kind of swarming around like bees, ready to pull up on me also. So this is the dynamic and how and this is back in 2008, 2007, when I was doing these temporary assignments before I got to the unit. This is how the demand for sex trafficking is so, I can't find the word for it, but it's so much, and it hasn't changed at all. And if anything, it's gotten worse. So I think people need to realize that the demand is what's causing this problem. And female officers really doing undercover work are the front lines to target sex buyers and traffickers. And it's very important to me to train female law enforcement to take on those roles.
Were you ever in a situation, Heidi, where you were afraid for your own life?
I've had a couple of instances. I mean, obviously, I've been doing this going on 16 years now, specifically just sex trafficking investigations and undercover work. And I remember one instance where I was on the street, and I try and do what I can to change up what I look like, because I'm highly identifiable, like a blonde light bulb standing out on the side of the road. And so I would wear wigs because I've had traffickers recognize me, and people that I've put in jail before that got out. And so changing up my appearance. In addition to that, my unit was filmed for 3 years, and we were featured in the Frontline PBS documentary, Sex Trafficking in America. So changing up my appearance is a critical thing for me. And I remember one instance where we were doing a detail where we had like the arrest at a hotel with like a second story, and this vehicle pulled in, and he stopped to look at me. I recognized him immediately as a pimp that I had arrested. Unfortunately, that trafficker, the victim in that case, decided not to prosecute. And so I had already booked him into jail. I had done an entire investigation, a warrant at his house, all the things. And this is something that happens a lot, is that victims change their mind about playing the game of 1, 2, 3, 5 years before this thing goes to court or gets resolved. And they bow out, and they no longer want to press charges. They no longer want to testify. And the whole thing pretty much goes away until we can find another victim or another crime. So anyway, this trafficker recognized me, and he flipped a U-ey and was heading back towards me. So I ran up the stairs, and they ended up pulling him over, and he did have a handgun in his car.
Wow.
So yeah, a little bit dangerous for sure.
Well, and that's what I want to, for my listeners, right? That this is not a game. This is not a joke, right? There are real people that are losing their lives over sex trafficking and human trafficking. What was the youngest case that you ever did?
Well, recently, and this is what I tell people when I talk about my book and why I wrote my book, is recently we've contacted an 11-year-old out on the street being trafficked. So it is a matter of having these conversations earlier than you would think. Like you wouldn't think that you need to talk to your 8, 9, 10-year-old, but this is what we're asking now, is that you have conversations with them so that they can recognize things happening, and individuals that will come into their life through social media, gaming platforms, the internet, and would suggest that they do certain things or run away from home and those kind of things.
So Heidi, what indicators should parents be looking for?
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of indicators, specifically for juveniles, though. Obviously, perception is everything. And for some reason, kids think that if they have X number of Instagram followers or TikTok followers, that they're going to get money or be paid in some way, because the influencers out there are saying that this is how this goes. But the problem is having those profiles open to the public is an open door into your house, into your child's bedroom, and you do not know who they're talking to. And so it's critical that parents, first of all, if a child's asking for a social media platform, that parents educate themselves on what that platform is and what the privacy settings are, and monitor that so that, they don't get influenced into switching those off or are able to switch those things off. I think it's super important that parents invest in parental controls, whether it's, the Gab wireless phone or the Bark phone or whatever parental control app you have, but don't put all of your stock in parental controls. My own niece at 12 years old, my sister, she's related to two cops. She put parental controls on the phone, and my niece was able to bypass those parental controls. She had created a secret Instagram, and men were messaging her trying to get her to send nude pictures of herself. So I think that having the conversation in combination with the parental controls is super important. So in my book, I talk about how we should talk to our kids about people trying to ask personal information about ourselves. If they're asking how old you are, what your last name is, where you go to school, whereabouts you live, where your parents work, where your siblings go to school. Personal and identifying information is like a red flag. And then the second thing is you need to talk to your child about these individuals trying to trip, so to speak, move them from the platform that we're conversing on, because that platform might be monitored by their parents, to one that their parents don't know about, like a Telegram account or a Snapchat, because they think those things are locked down, that they can delete the conversation, that law enforcement can't get access to it, which we can, but they think that we can't. But the action of having a conversation with this person that's a friend, and then all of a sudden, after asking personal information, they're trying to move you to another platform, that should be another red flag. Another red flag would be obviously keeping the conversation with this new person that they're talking to a secret. We shouldn't have secrets from our parents. And then deleting the conversation, speaking in an emoji or an acronym that means certain things. So all of these things are super red flags for parents. And my mindset is that if we have conversations with our children about these things happening, because it isn't if, it is when these are going to happen, because it's going to happen, then in a moment where we're not there and we can't be there, they can recognize this is going on and self-police themselves and say, wait a minute, my mom told me about this. I wonder if this is a creeper. And it'll cause them to not further engage with this stranger and then tell you, the parent, about it. And that's what's so important.
A lot of the indicators that you said to look out for also describe catfishing. How is catfishing and human trafficking connected?
Well, I mean, obviously, anyone acting like a peer or a friend and that you don't know in real life, those are all concerning things. I think that people need to realize that the whole premise of friends is not the word that by definition friend. That is someone that you would know in real life. These are acquaintances, these are strangers, these are people you actually don't even know is behind the screen, behind the pictures. And it's so dangerous now because not only do you have potential traffickers out there recruiting and grooming, you also have buyers who are bypassing the middleman, bypassing traffickers, and just directly messaging profiles of young people and asking them if they want a sugar daddy or if they want to be a sugar baby and those kind of things. And then in addition to that, the whole premise behind child predators in itself. And then on top of that, you also have sextortion, where there are people in other countries that are literally trying to hurt Americans in any way they can. So all of those things are going on, and it's one of those things that parents really need to realize when they give them access to these devices and things, that's the risk.
Heidi, I want to talk about child exploitation. On social media, how do you feel that we're encouraging the exploitation through images that we're sharing, like good moments and stuff like that? How do you feel about that?
It's one of those things where even when you have your profile as a parent locked down, you may be friends with old high school friends that you don't know them now anymore. And they could be registered sex offenders now. they could have, done something. And now they have access to the photos that you share. So even though you have a lockdown profile, unless you're auditing your own friends list and really know those people, do you really know those people? And what can they do to exploit the images that you share? So we really should think twice before sharing those things, especially of our kids.
And Heidi, tell us about the case that led to a trafficker being sentenced to nearly 500 years in prison.
Yeah, so that was the biggest case of my career, and it took 5 years from the date that the juvenile disclosed what was going on to the point where we went to trial. And what happened is this little girl who was 13 when her uncle, so this is familial trafficking, it was her uncle, a relative, was having, well, he had sex with her, and then she was unfortunately living in northern Arizona in a small town with her grandma. Her mom had passed away, and she didn't know if her uncle was her father because there was some incest going on. Through DNA, we found out that wasn't the case. But either way, her guardian was an elderly woman, her grandmother in her 90s. And unfortunately, in the small town, after being exploited by her uncle, she ends up getting in some trouble. And so the solution that he comes up with is to approach his mom, her grandma, and ask her, can he have this juvenile move in with him down in Phoenix? And unfortunately, the grandma thought it was a good idea to let him be like a father figure, and he promised to put her in school and all the things, and none of those things happened. And instead, unfortunately, when she moved down here with him, he exploited her further by not only continuing to have sex with her, but he prostituted her out of his house, along with another juvenile, which was his 17-year-old stepdaughter, and 5 other adult females. And so the way that the case came to our attention was they were going to go do pornography in California, and you have to test for STDs. And she popped positive for something. And so he said, that's okay, we'll go get your little sister. So on that day, she's 16, almost 17, been in this situation for years with her uncle. And she says to herself, yeah, no, I'm not going to let you do the same thing to my little sister on that day, who was 13. And so she calls her older sister, who calls the police, and that's how it came to our attention. Now, this took 5 years to go to trial, not because we were not ready, but because it was a tactic on the part of the defense to delay and continue, hoping that something would happen to these victims, that they would change their mind about pressing charges, that they would have something happen to them, because they knew that my main victims returned to prostitution and drugs very heavily. And they were hoping that something would happen to them and the whole thing would go away. But it didn't. And luckily, the 7 victims showed up to court and testified, including that juvenile who was in her 20s when the jury saw her. And he was found guilty on 101 out of 105 counts of child sex trafficking, aggravated assault, sexual misconduct with a minor, all kinds of charges. And he was sentenced to 493.5 years in prison. So it was an incredible outcome and a record for the United States.
Wow. And do you have contact with any of these victims today, Heidi?
I am on Facebook with the one main victim still.
And is that part of the PBS documentary, Sex Trafficking in America? Is that story
No,
included in there?
no, that happened before the documentary. The documentary came out in 2019. We went to trial in 2015.
Oh, wow. So it's already been 10 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So one unique thing about that case, though, is that in addition to it being familial trafficking, it was almost kind of like a cult following as well, where this trafficker was obsessed with these French pornography book called The Story of O. In fact, in the book, the character had these rings, and he had these rings made, and we found evidence of the rings being placed on the finger of the victims. He also branded his victims with tattoos. And then when we went to trial, the movie and book series 50 Shades of Grey came out, and we had sequestered 600 jurors because we even had like a packet for each juror in the voir dire process to find out how they feel about some of the things going on in 50 Shades of Grey, where people were on Dr. Phil talking about their amazing sex lives, but some of the things that happened to my victims, like being beat with a riding crop and wearing a dog collar and chains and whooped with things, those were not for sexual gratification. Those were for punishment and awful things that happened to the victims. So it was a really great outcome, and I wish it got more media attention than it did.
Well, I hope that we get some more, even years later, films like these should be seen over and over. We need that awareness out there. I really like the title of what you're doing, a chance for awareness, because it's simple. There's nothing, like in your face. It's a chance for awareness, like, and your last name is Chance. So I think that it's really, I'm going to just bring the book up. In the book, I want to understand the color and why the large lettering and all of that. If you could just let the audio listeners know what we're looking at in a second. I'm just going to pull it up here. Here we go. And it's just going to slide us to the side. So there you go, Heidi.
So obviously, being in law enforcement, the thin blue line, blue is my favorite color. So the cover of the book is blue. And I wanted it to stand out, the words "talk to them." I mean, I've never written a book before. I'm a police officer. I don't know the first thing about being an author, but in learning about being an author, having a simple title, which is my plea to parents, talk to them, which is the title, talk to them. Because obviously I am trying to have parents have these conversations. And then obviously the yellow is kind of like the crime scene tape yellow, where I have the subtitle of Navigating Difficult Conversations with Youth in the Digital Age. And I don't know if you knew this, but I just had this translated in Spanish. So my Spanish title is Habla con ellos, and I don't speak any Spanish. So luckily I had found a female officer that I supported who's doing translation on the side in another state. I met her on LinkedIn, and she translated the book and also did an audio version in Spanish of the book, reading it aloud, which will be releasing soon. But the Spanish version in print is out already, and I wanted to make sure that I was reaching as many parents as I could. And so I feel like it's a vulnerability for non-English speaking parents who are living here, specifically in the United States, where a trafficker is going to target a kid whose parents don't know what's going on, and it's easy to manipulate them. And so having it in Spanish, and I'm trying to figure out how to market to that demographic, so especially with me not being able to speak Spanish, I wish I could, getting it into the hands of parents. So I definitely would appreciate anybody's help on that one. But yeah, sharing it, that would help for sure.
Well, Spanish is the second most spoken language in America, correct?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. As far as I know, yeah.
So that's a good thing to have it like that.
Yeah.
So we have a question here that came in. How has the landscape of trafficking changed in the digital age?
Yeah, so as an undercover, and I catfish pimps. That's my favorite game to play when I'm doing female undercover work. Is I have 7 Facebooks, 5 Instagrams, Tag, Meet Me, Bumble, Plentyfish, Snapchat, TikTok. I just opened up a Discord, all in undercover personas, because my intent is to have traffickers recruit and groom me instead of a live victim. And in doing that, I've had traffickers that I've extradited all the way from Orlando, Florida to Arizona to see a judge, get charged with a felony, go to prison, have a felony on their record, and they've never seen my face. And so in doing all of this catfishing, I've done warrants, for our conversation on the social media platform that we initiated talking to each other on. And I found that the message that was sent to me was sent to hundreds of other profiles, all female, and not just local to Arizona, obviously, all over the United States. So the way that I feel this is really blowing up is that traffickers don't have real jobs. Their only job is to manage the victims they have right now and look for new ones. And so they can literally sit on their butt in a car at the hotel while they're watching their victims out there and be actively recruiting and trying to groom new victims by casting that fishing line to hundreds of profiles daily. So this is why this is so concerning, because this is what they're doing. And I know it because I've seen the evidence.
And Heidi, what is the statistics of family trafficking, family members?
Well, they say 40% of trafficking is familial, but I would say that's a higher number because technically familial trafficking includes someone you're in a relationship with. And the whole part of the lifestyle and the game of trafficking is pimps trying to make people feel like you're in a relationship with them, even though there's weirdness with other females around. We're all in this family, we're all in this relationship. And so I would say it's probably 100% familial, but that's just my opinion.
Wow, that's scary. Like 40% is scary. Any percent is scary. And this is why I love having these conversations on Tea Time, is because the awareness is important. It might be happening right next door to you and you don't even know that it's happening. And you said like your own sister, like your niece. Like, the kids are smart these days. They know how to bypass all of the passwords, all of the limitations. They know how to get into there. How do you feel about a phone in the bedroom with children?
Yeah, I feel obviously if you're going to have to give them a phone, get them a phone like Bark or Gab wireless, that their phones have no internet on them at all. I leaving them unattended with devices at all. And then I just want to tell you, I recently partnered with a new company. It's called Kovo Home, Kovo Home. And I could get you the link for them. But basically, they have a firewall device that they created that has AI technology on it. And you can plug that into the home internet. And that's any device using the home internet is now going to be where you, the parent, can control through an app. You can shut the internet off if you want to. You can block websites that you don't want them to have access to, like YouTube or Snapchat and things. You can put in keywords. And if it's where certain words, like if they're on Discord or a computer live streaming game and they're having conversations with strangers about sex or unaliving or suicide or keywords, it will block that from continuing on and notify you. Like, this is huge. And I'm super excited because they gave me a discount that I can provide you the link for. And it's really a game changer as far as parental controls that we have on phones, but now you have parental controls in your own house.
You also sell some products online that I've seen on your website, and I want to get into those products. It's called the doorstop alarm, security door lock, the Hero emergency fire blanket. Let's talk about some of those that people might not even know are out there.
Yeah, so my website at chanceforawareness.com, I have some online classes that I've developed. I have, recorded myself presenting what I call the power of awareness, which is my human trafficking awareness class. And it's about 2.5 hours or so. And then I also recently released my modern day situational awareness class. That's really perfect for like preteens, teens going off to college. And in that, I talk about obviously being situationally aware when you're traveling, at home, when you're commuting, when you're at the grocery store, parking your vehicle, all those things. And so those recommended products that I talk about in my course, I have listed on my website as well. So then that way, if someone wants to purchase, a lightweight door alarm that if you travel a lot, you can just put it in, or the secondary, because you've seen those videos where people are using a hanger to slide underneath the hotel door and dismantle the other locks. I mean, we have to, kind of think about other locks that we can travel with that are lightweight that really don't make a difference in your luggage, but it makes a difference in your safety when you're in a hotel room. So I have some products listed there because I think it's important to share that information also in just general situational awareness.
Well, and I'd like to get that information out there because a lot of people are not aware of these products and not aware that they can make a difference. We had a question that came in and it says, how can community members and organizations play a role in preventing and awareness?
Yes. So in doing my business, I have two missions, and one is the continued education to law enforcement and passing that torch to female undercovers and law enforcement training and sharing all of my case studies and things that I've done. But the other mission is the community awareness, because I believe an informed public is an informed jury. And that is the only way I'm going to get 100+ years sentence on these suspects, is having a jury be informed. Because I might come in and testify that I need you to see this person as a victim, but my next sentence might be that they committed a crime of prostitution. And my sentence after that might be that they're walking freely down the side of the road with a phone in their hand, and I'm trying to describe that they're trapped and not free to leave. And having a jury wrap their head around those things is super important. That's why I did my course. But in addition to that, obviously, it's super important for me to continue to share this information to businesses. I'm an informational speaker, not a motivational speaker. I'm probably going to make the men in the room feel guilty about some of the behaviors that they've done in the past. And hopefully after my training, they won't continue to what happens at the conference, stays at the conference, and be contacting prostitutes off of prostitution websites and things. So I'm hoping that to get into the speaking realm and come into conferences of businesses, and also to help them develop zero tolerance policies for their employees. Because I have, as a female undercover, been solicited in the middle of the day by buyers driving a company vehicle on the clock, using the work computers to access these prostitution websites. And these companies either aren't screening for that, aren't taking any policy or action against these people we're arresting. And it really is going to take everyone to hold people to a higher standard and start either giving consequences or firing these people for participating as buyers. And that's my goal, is to get out to the public, not only the education and awareness, but also develop policies and create a zero tolerance to this behavior.
I'm 100% with you on that one. Zero tolerance needs to be in place. Like, we let off so many people because they work at a certain office, or they work for a certain company, or they're higher up. We really got to pay attention and just stop it. We have a question here that came in. What are some misconceptions people have about trafficking and its victims?
Yes. So I don't know if you're on TikTok a lot or Instagram, but recently I've seen myself, people doing reels or TikToks where it's this, girl that's acting freaked out because a shopping cart was left by her driver's door at the Target, and saying that she's being targeted to be trafficked. That has nothing to do with sexual exploitation of a person. So obviously they need to be educated on what trafficking is. These videos and reels and TikToks and the things that they're doing are giving this perception, not only confusing what trafficking is, but also making light of it and making fun of it in some ways and misdirecting people. And it's confusing everyone because it's not at all what it really is. And so without being a vigilante, my hope is that people will put out correct information, stop believing the myths, stop believing what you see on TikTok, take the steps to learn for yourself, go take the class, even if it's not mine, take the class, and learn that trafficking involves the commercial sexual exploitation of a person. Nothing to do with a sticker on a window or a shopping cart by your car door. You might be being set up for an armed robbery or a sexual assault of some kind, but labeling every crime out there, the buzzword human trafficking, is diluting the severity of what this problem actually is. And then as far as vigilantes, there are a lot of people that are doing their own child predator operations for TikTok views. And you can't just chat with a predator, get them to meet you, then call the police. It doesn't work that way. In fact, most states have statutes where I have to be the one, as a sworn police officer, I have to be the one chatting with the suspect because we have chain of custody, we have entrapment issues, we have rules to follow. If you want to do that stuff, go be a police officer. Go to the academy, become a police officer, and please, by all means. But don't be a vigilante because we can't prosecute those. You're not doing anything. The only thing you're doing is making my job harder as an undercover and making these suspects more hinked up and making me have to do more to get them to show up for real when we actually will be taking them into custody and we actually will be prosecuting.
Well,
So
it's also a distraction, right, Heidi, to take and give focus to the buyers and you know the traffickers out there. You're giving them means to say, oh well, if you guys do all these TikToks and Instagrams putting misinformation out there, everybody's going to be in fear all the time, right?
yes, and it's also where it's very dangerous. We've had people shot at, and one guy got shot in the head doing a child predator operation. They're also suing, like these people who know that you can't press charges on them now because you didn't do it right in the first place, are now going to sue these TikTokers for defamation of character because you put them out on, your social media platform with who knows how many followers, and it affected their lives, and they're starting to sue. So let's stop doing that. Know what recognize what the indicators are. I have a whole list of indicators on my website, also linked in my Instagram. It's a chance for awareness, but there's underscore between each word. But basically, if you want to get involved, there are so many placement issues that we have. We need placement for boys. We need placement for kids in transition. We need people to volunteer. We need people to donate items, because I might have a victim I'm interviewing across the table from me, and she's thinking about her property back at the hotel room, because that's the most important thing to her right now, because that's all that her trafficker let her own. And all it is her toiletries and some shoes and a hoodie and flip-flops and things, underwear. And those are things that if I had a backpack full of those items to give to her in the moment of a rescue, that goes a million miles in her realizing we're actually there to help, number one. And number two, that she doesn't have to worry about that stuff. She's got stuff of her own now. So lots of ways you can get involved without being a vigilante.
Heidi, you mentioned boys. Let's talk about boys, because a lot of people think it's just women that are being trafficked. Let's talk about the boys.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we don't have a lot of case studies to share about male victims, because women often come forward, or girls come forward more often than they do. And it's not that it isn't happening. We just hear about the females coming forward more than the males. But absolutely, that is another dynamic that I think there needs to be more awareness to and more studies, because it seems like some of the cases that I'm aware of, it's female traffickers trafficking boys, which is a very interesting dynamic that I'm sure you were not prepared for me to say.
You can see it in my face, right? I'm just like,
Yeah.
what?
Yes, I've had a couple. It's interesting.
So Heidi, are they females that they know? Is that into that family dynamic?
Somewhat, but also some like a trafficker would do, offering them a place to stay because they, maybe come out sexually to their parents, and then they get kicked out of their house and they have nowhere to go. And then this woman offers them a place to stay and then exploits them.
Wow. There's so much out there that we need to get out there. And I'm so glad that I have you on today and getting this out there, because, it's these open conversations, these open dialogues, and getting the proper information out there to the public is what we need. So what message do you hope the readers and audience will take away from your story and your work, Heidi?
Yeah, so I feel that there's several things I want to tell you. People need to get away from the perception that they have of what a bad guy looks like, what a buyer might look like, what a trafficker might look like, because really, just like you had said, it could be the person next door. Traffickers are of all ages, demographics, male and female. And it's a perception that people have that comes from movies and misinformation, and we really need to think outside the box and actually recognize that we need to put our own biases aside and realize that it could be anyone. And then the other thing is I've had some victims that I've done interviews with that described an incident of an assault, and then when I asked them where it happened, and a lot of times it's out in the open, it's at a bus stop, it's in the middle of broad daylight, and people were there driving by, walking by, no one called the police. And I don't know, obviously some brought out their phones just to film it for a TikTok, which is also horrible, but no one's calling the police. And I don't want people to think that we have to wait for the cops to show up or think that we have to have a patrol car come to our house. If you report something, you can be anonymous. If you report something, you can provide information over the phone or through email. You don't have to have the police and the patrol car and the uniform show up at your house. But please make that call, because these victims described instances where I'm trying to corroborate their story, because a lot of these cases are his word against her word. And unless I have things to back that up, like video surveillance, a witness, those kind of things, I can't say that those things happen. Not that I don't believe my victim. I absolutely believe my victim. I believe those things happen, but the suspect could claim something else. And just by you calling and reporting it, I can corroborate, this is the date she said this happened, and look at that. 15 people called the police that day and reported something happening. That happened. And I'm able to go to court with that. So it's super important.
So Heidi, how do you feel about social media and like TikTok's influencers and all these likes and follows and numbers? I'm a woman that doesn't care about numbers, because numbers means that there's people that are watching you that you probably don't want watching you. So how do you feel about social media and how it's distracting and dividing and making it harder for officers like yourself?
Well, I mean, social media is causing the ability for all of this to expand exponentially. And I don't know what we can do about it. And I feel that these platforms need to start becoming responsible, being held responsible for allowing for these things to happen. Just like when Backpage was in existence, Backpage.com got taken down by the FBI in, was it 2018? And, we had to do something to take down a platform that was selling people. And unfortunately, even in doing that, all of these other websites popped up. And unfortunately, some of those websites they're not in the United States. So they don't really care about my search warrant or my subpoena. So it's really, it's been really hard, and it's not getting any better. That's where I'm feeling that we just need to go back to the basics. I'm going to need to have parents start at the beginning of bringing up their kids correctly and with the right information and with the awareness that these things are going to happen and how to navigate all of that.
I think parents need to start having conversations with their children instead of technology.
Yes.
All of these phones and iPads and, or slap the TV on and put something on that, that's causing them to think different things, or, it's that distraction so the parent can do whatever they want. I think conversation between parent and child should be coming back to the table, like Sunday dinners, roast beef dinners, and we have that conversation. But how do we start these conversations with our children when we might feel that there is something going on?
Yeah, so in my book, I go over a lot of that, because I made it as a how-to guide, and I modeled it after how, as a forensic interviewer, I would conduct a forensic interview, where, even where it's happening at matters. Like, I can't do a forensic interview of a victim outside with distractions of cars and things. So in the book, I talk about, having that, critical conversation when you're driving them to school. You're distracted, you're driving, you're not facing them, you're not giving them your undivided attention, all of those things. Like, that's like just the tip of the iceberg. But I go through rapport building, I go through confrontation in case there is an instance where you have discovered that they're having a conversation with some stranger and you have to confront them about it and give them a consequence. So I go through all of that in the book in great detail. And I think that's super important to recognize that every part of this conversation matters. And then also that it's not just a one-time conversation. It's a conversation that has to go on all throughout growing up. And, bits and pieces can be left out as far as the, sexual content of the conversation in the early years. But, broaching that topic gently and periodically and consistently all throughout is super important.
And what's one tip every parent should know today?
Well, I think the one tip is that they really need to educate themselves on all of these games and social media apps and those kind of things. That's why I recommend Bark Technologies and Gap Wireless, because those two companies not only create these devices and the smartwatches and the phones, but they also do blog articles. So they're doing the work for you as a parent. You just need to know where to go. And they both do articles on all of these new games and apps that come out every day. And all you have to do is go to their article and search. Like if you search the Friendly app, Phrendly, Friendly app, these two companies rate the danger level of those apps and how easy it would be for a predator to create a profile and act as though they're a peer and converse with your child. And then you can make an informed decision on, yeah, no, I'm not going to let you download that app or that game. And so I think a constant education is extremely important.
And what's one tip we can give children that are being trafficked by their parents or family members?
Well, it's not necessarily a tip, but it's a fact. When, like I said, I first started working this crime, we were arresting prostitutes, and we have a lot of relationships to repair because we were wrong. We were arresting the victims. And no matter what a trafficker might say to you, you're not going to go to jail. You're not going to be in trouble. We are trying to help you and get you out of this situation and get you somewhere safe, get you resources, get you back on your feet, get you safe. And so no matter what this trafficker might say, we're not going to arrest you.
And one word to describe your mission.
One word. I think I told you brave is my word. Yeah.
Why that word?
Well, I mean, it's something that I try to be every day, especially when I'm in the face of true evil. I've got a lot of enemies. I've put more than a couple traffickers away for hundreds of years, and I've even heard from them from prison.
Oh,
And it's I've got to be brave myself to continue on and not let I can't live in fear. So it is where I feel that I am protected every day, and I feel called to do this work, and I'm proud to be doing it. So.
and Heidi, the hardest but most rewarding moment in your career?
Well, I in 2012, I don't often talk about this, but in 2012, I actually took in one of my victims as my foster daughter.
Oh.
And she was in my home for 9 months. And I think the hardest thing was it didn't work out. And I ended up having to, kind of give her back to the child welfare system. And I think that was the hardest because I really thought, I don't know what I was thinking. I was never, at that time, a parent of a teenager. So in addition to everything else going on with her, I also had the whole boyfriends and all the things that drinking alcohol underage and all the things she was doing. And I definitely wish I had, a different outcome with that. But I do know that she never returned to prostitution as far as I'm aware. So, I think that unfortunately, the drugs that she was using have a hold on her even to this day. So I hear from her every now and again, but that's the one thing that I was not prepared for was the drugs.
We just had a question that came in, Heidi, about child welfare. Is there trafficking going on in the systems?
Well, I mean, I don't have a personal case to share about that. I know that a lot of people have opinions about child welfare. I can tell you that system has some, things that they need to change and do better. But I also know several case managers and caseworkers that work as hard as they can to make a difference and rehabilitate children and put them on a different path and do what they can. So there are two sides to every story, and I'm hopeful that there isn't trafficking happening in the system. I don't personally have an example of that.
And what gives you hope in this fight?
Well, my hope is that every time I share about awareness and educate the public, that I can tell that they are inspired. I can tell that they remember my examples and my case studies and my instruction, And my hope is that they serve as a juror someday and that they hold a trafficker accountable.
And Heidi, I found Nurses United Against Human Trafficking. Can you tell us a little bit about that one? Because I believe you guys are partnered together, right?
Yes, yes. So I did a digital literacy for parents awareness class, an online safety class for parents that is hosted on the Nurses United Against Human Trafficking website. Yes.
So you guys are partnering together, correct?
Yes.
And you also do that work together on your site. So anybody wanted to know more about your site, could you just spell out your website for the audio listeners and tell us a little bit about what else they find on that site?
Yeah. A chance. So ACHANCEFORAWARENESS.com, a chance for awareness.com. And on my website, I do have those resources. Like I said, I have the sex trafficking indicators list that I created. I have a decoding emojis resource. And then I also have my own blog articles where I write articles about cases, about things that I want people to be aware of, those kind of things. And then that is the platform where I have my online classes, my power of awareness and my situational awareness classes. And then I, of course, talk about my book on the website as well, but you can purchase that anywhere where books are sold.
So Heidi, is that part of the Anchor Project?
So I have partnered with the Anchor Project. So I have a couple of awareness allies, is what I call them, on my website, where we share each other's information and we talk through, what each other are doing, our organizations.
And 6 truths about sex trafficking.
6 truths. The first truth is that these cases are really hard to prove. And a lot of times, like I said, victims initially report things and then unfortunately, they never get prosecuted because we unfortunately can't testify for them. They have to be there to face their, defendant has the right to have face their accuser. The next truth is that victims aren't exactly saying, hey, Detective Chance, I'm over here, come talk to me. They don't want to talk to us, unfortunately. They're still in love with their trafficker. They are loyal to them. They're in fear. They're worried that they're going to get arrested, even though I'm trying to say you're not going to get arrested. And it's really difficult to get victims to see themselves as victims. Another truth, law enforcement isn't as educated about this problem as you would think. Back in 1998, when I was in the police academy, I never had a class on human trafficking. I was taught to look for gangsters and drug dealers and investigate other crimes, but I never had a class on human trafficking. And so we didn't even start teaching our own law enforcement in the Phoenix area until 2014 in the academy. And as I travel around the United States, I'm noticing that there's a lot of law enforcement agencies that don't even have a class right now in 2025 for their academy. So law enforcement also is lacking in training, and it's super important that, like my second mission, obviously, is that I continue educating law enforcement. Let's see here. Am I on number 4?
Yeah.
Another truth. The truth is, even though you've been traveling recently and you see the National Human Trafficking Hotline in bathroom stalls and posters everywhere, the National Hotline is based in DC, and they were created for survivors to get out of the life of prostitution and not necessarily involve law enforcement. So if you report something to the trafficking hotline, it's going to be a delay before that information gets to the right state, to the right city, to the right law enforcement agency, to the right detective. So if it's something happening right now, that would still be a call to 911. And also there are some states like Arizona has created their own human trafficking hotline. And that is manned by ASU, Arizona State University, and another law enforcement entity. And they have like the backline phone number to shelters and can get immediate services going and things. And the backline phone number to the human trafficking units. Another truth is in another law enforcement thing, we're behind on having actual detectives that solely investigate human trafficking. Before a couple of years ago, Phoenix Police Department was the only one in the metropolitan Arizona area that had an actual unit of dedicated detectives that was their only position. And I'm finding as I travel around that, they try and have their sex crimes guys work human trafficking also, but really, and I know it's a manpower issue, but you need to have like at least one dedicated detective to work just human trafficking.
Wow. And how do you find your final words for all the listeners today?
Well, I think the whole phrase, just like in the airport, you see something, say something, it's just really important to report. Like I said, sometimes that's how we put cases together to cooperate with a victim's telling us. And we can show this is accurate, this is what the victim said, and then someone also called the police about it. And this trafficker is over here saying, I never met that girl, but you were identified the other day because these people called. So I think it's so important to, if you see something, say something.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to do a closing summary, and then
Okay.
we'll let you get back to work and
Thank
catch,
you.
catch some of those people out there, because they look like everyday people. We got to really get that out there. So thank you, Detective Heidi Chance, for sitting with us at Tea Time Table today. Your courage, compassion, and dedication reminds us that awareness is more than knowledge. It is a gift of protection, a promise of change, and a call to action. Your mission to raise awareness and protect our youths is a call to action for all of us. To my listeners, I encourage you to learn more, stay connected, and support Heidi's work with a chance for awareness. Together, by spreading truth and education, we can create safer communities and stronger futures. Heidi's words encourage us to remain watchful, to start conversations, and to be a part of the solution. Every small step of awareness can save a life, and every voice raised in truth can bring healing to those who need it most. Tea Time with Miss Liz, where hearts unite, awareness grows and begins, and together we plant the seeds of a safer tomorrow, and change follows. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys all at 7 p.m. with the second Tea Time of today.